Welcome to a sports betting podcast from pregame.com for the week of October 15th, 2009. I'm your host, RJ Bell. I'm joined by Vegas Runner, genuine professional bettor here in Vegas, Marco D'Angelo, 30 years in the business. This episode, or a segment, we're going to be breaking down the... Who are we breaking down?
Baltimore, Minnesota.
Baltimore, Minnesota. I was so thinking about the last segment when we were on the Giants-Saints. We got Baltimore, Minnesota, and as usual, Vegas Runner start off by giving us a line analysis.
Very surprising. This one opened Minnesota -3, -120, meaning they were expecting Minnesota money, didn't want to get off the number 3 easily, so I think they threw it out there to touch and feel. Surprisingly, the money came in the other way on Baltimore, because now we're looking at a line of 2.5. Anyone that's using 3 with Minnesota is given plus 110 on the Minnesota side. So to get 3 with Baltimore now, you got to lay 130.
All right, so we had opened up where, again, home field is about 3 points, so Minnesota was slightly favored at 3 and some juice.
Right.
And then now it's moved all the way off the key number 3, which means pretty big Baltimore money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so like we've been saying, we have 3 official picks each week with on the podcast here. And Marco, this is your game for your official pick. So tell us what we should be thinking about.
Well, as you know, I look at games and I look at the lines and I say, what's Vegas want me to do? And when I saw this line open up at the number they did, Minnesota, right now, their stock is as high as it can be. Everybody's in love with Brett Favre. He's talking that this is the best team he's ever played on. You know, he's, not making fans in Green Bay, that's for sure. And they're at pick the winner at home, Minnesota. Against a
at 2.5, you're saying
even when I saw the 3, I mean it's pick the winner at home. You're basically saying these two teams are even. And you're looking at one team's undefeated and the other team's 3-2, coming off 2 back-to-back losses. That now the stock is definitely falling off on the Baltimore side. This is where I want them. I love Baltimore in this game. Minnesota, I know they're doing well, but they're counterfeit. Their
All right,
wins.
well, hold on. Here's what I don't get, and that's what we try to do here is have a conversation. I totally would understand if Baltimore were 5-0 in this spot, and you're saying, oh, look how good this Baltimore team is, but they're not. But they're. Well, I guess the other way to look at it, forget that, they're 3-2. So you're saying, hey, I like that they lost these 2 games because I got them right where we won them, whereas they're underrated. But if they're underrated, how in the world are they better than Minnesota? Because as a 2.5-point underdog on the road, they're saying that Baltimore's the better team. So it seems like you're getting the worst of both worlds, is a team that's been exposed in 2 losses, but the line's not accounting for it.
The line's not accounting for it on the surface, but the sharp guys in VR said it right away. Well, because the public's going to bet Minnesota. The public looks at this game and looks at Minnesota undefeated.
Well, if they're so sure the public's going to bet Minnesota, why is the lines makers moving this line to 2.5?
The sharp money, I believe, did come in on Baltimore here, because
clearly
they were expecting Minnesota money. That's why they threw the -120 out there, I think. I mean, that's the telling sign to me.
Where's this line going to close?
120.
Kickoff, where's this line at?
3.
It's back to 3.
It's 3, Minnesota even. I think you're going to have to lay 120 to get 3 with Baltimore on Sunday.
Here's my point. Minnesota, take away their records of their opponents so far is 7-17. They're an undefeated team, but their opponents' records are 7-17.
Yeah, Cleveland, St. Louis, Detroit.
Right. The 2 good teams they played, San Francisco, and really right now, how good is San Francisco after the way they got blown out last week? They needed a miracle play to beat San Francisco. San Francisco had them beat in that game. They took it to them, and they were without their best running back, Gore. Then the other game, Green Bay, and that's the whole game that everybody's basing their love on Minnesota. Everybody got to see the Monday night game. They watched Brett Favre do his magic again. But what was lost in that game is they went up and down the field on this Minnesota defense. Minnesota never really stopped Green Bay, but on one drive. They had the 4th down where they stopped them inside the goal line there. Green Bay went up and down the field. The only time Green Bay didn't score is a turnover by Rodgers. This team is not as good as they look, and Baltimore's not as bad as they looked the last 2 weeks.
I disagree with that, but I think you're making a great point. Is there's only 2 wins that are making Minnesota look like a non-counterfeit or a legitimate 5-0. The Green Bay win, I'm not so sure I agree they went up and down, but what I do agree is Green Bay had massive offensive line problems. They had to reshuffle 3 positions off of 1 injury. And to me, what the public doesn't understand usually, and the smart public does, is offensive line dictates a big chunk of the game. So you had Minnesota in a perfect spot at home against a team with a reshuffled offensive line, and they won the game, but not necessarily in a dominating fashion. Now, if San Francisco truly is suspect because of they laid an egg last week, now you really have to question this Minnesota team. So I would agree with that. Now, I'm going to counter, though. This Baltimore team is not near as good as people think. This defense is not what they were last year. I don't know if it's a year of age. I don't know exactly what. This defense is not as good. They can be thrown on. And now Flacco, who last year at best managed games, I watched a lot of Baltimore games last year, literally they would run the ball on 3rd and 12. I mean, mid-season, 3rd and 12, they're running the ball because they don't want this guy throwing. And now all of a sudden he's one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. I haven't seen that. So if the defense is down and the offense is based on Flacco, who is maybe the 15th best quarterback in the league, I'm not sure how this team's so good. Don't forget, 2 weeks ago on this podcast, we said that Baltimore had, 9 projected wins on the year? And we were like, oh my God, how dumb was that? Now we're looking at it. What has this team done? Getting beat by Cincinnati. The Steelers got beat by Cincinnati on the road, and they dominated that game. They should have won it. And this is Baltimore at home, and they return a pickoff for a touchdown. They still can't beat Cincinnati? I mean, is this Baltimore team as good as you thought?
I said Baltimore at the beginning of the year. One of my future bets was under on the win total.
So what's changed your mind?
Right now, I'm not impressed with Minnesota.
So you're thinking Baltimore might be a little overrated, Minnesota's even more overrated.
Absolutely. And the last 2 games with Baltimore, they lost to New England. It went down to the final series. I mean,
yeah.
New England had to have a 4th quarter stand in the red zone to hang on at home. And then last week it was
they let up a touchdown with 10 seconds left.
Against the division rival. Division rival.
You're supposed to win at home as a 9-point favorite against
you should win that game, exactly. But I agree with Marco in the sense that 3 weeks ago, Baltimore was crowned the AFC champs. They were the unbeatable team. Now the stock is so down on Baltimore.
But you're still...
But the only problem I see with this game is that the line isn't giving it that. It doesn't reflect that. Like, this line should be higher based on their stock being down.
That's why Marco likes
We're not gaining line value with Baltimore.
A 3-2 team playing a 5-0 team.
Right. I would hope
at the 5-0 team, this line should be 4.5.
And I would love to take Baltimore at 4. Like, if this was 4, I'd be all over Baltimore.
All right, so we have to do something real quick. Right. Now, here's the amazing thing, and this is a good lesson on statistics. Marco probably is one of the best cappers I've ever met. The guy is literally 56, 57% over decades, and he has an amazing approach. I don't always agree with it, but I don't often buck it because this guy wins like crazy. Unfortunately, he's had 2 weeks in a row now that we've made bets on the podcast, cash money. We are in Vegas, and unfortunately, he's 0-2. Last week, it was the New England-Denver game, and VR said, "Oh, I know Denver's getting 3. You keep the 3.
Keep the 3.
I don't need it."
Yeah.
So
we go way back.
It was a nickel on this.
Yeah. No money line price. I don't want the $7.50.
All right, so there you go. Now
you guys are cutting into Marco's buffet money.
I don't want this
that.
So here,
you pass that over to him.
So
VR, on the house.
Who do you like? You like Baltimore or Minnesota here?
I like Baltimore. I'd like to get 4.
You love. All right, so I'm going to pity you. I think you actually made a good case to me that the Minnesota maybe isn't as good as I thought coming in this segment.
Sorry,
I'll bet you. I'll give you a chance to get your nickel back right now. You want to do it?
You got it.
All right, so I got Minnesota minus 2.5.
You got it.
All right, guys, great segment. Next up, we're going to be breaking down another NFL game. And remember, you can get all of our videos at pregame.tv, or if you want to download and listen, just go to iTunes and search for pregame.com.